Welcome to the 6-5 Insider Edition. I'm Patrick Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy, and I'm joined by my co-host Daniel Newman with Future Research. On the 6-5 Insider Editions, we talk with the most influential senior executives in the technology industry. But before I introduce today's guests, I just want to say hello to my partner in crime, the famous Daniel Newman. How are you, buddy?
Patrick, good afternoon. I am so excited to be here. I love the Insider Edition, our weekly show where we cover the 6 topics, 5 minutes deep analysis. Hopefully you're tuning in and listening to those. But these episodes, these Insider Editions, we really do pride ourselves on putting some of the most thoughtful executives across tech, and this show should not disappoint anyone.
That's right. And with that, what I'd like to do is introduce our guest, who's actually more famous than Daniel and I, and that's Jim Anderson, CEO of Lattice Semiconductor. Jim, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me here today. I don't know about the famous part. I think you guys are pretty famous too, so I'm not sure I agree, but thanks. I appreciate
it. Jim, there's Twitter famous and then there's industry famous. So we'll just leave it at that. But Lattice Semiconductor has been on quite the run. And, I have this little bit of a joke which says, hey, I don't always agree with Wall Street, but boy, what a turnaround, Jim. Very, very impressive. So
thanks.
For those listeners who may not be familiar with Lattice Semiconductor, can you talk a little bit about the company?
Sure, yeah. And even if you're not familiar with Lattice, you're probably using our products every day in some way or another, and I'll maybe talk a little bit about that. But Lattice, our specialty, what we're really the world leader in is making very small, very power efficient programmable devices called FPGAs. And those devices are very important across just a whole bunch of different applications in the industry. And we've been doing this for a lot of years. Actually, over 35 years, we've been innovating in this space. So this is our DNA. This is our specialty. And we go into applications that are really important to all of us. So things like critical infrastructure, like 5G wireless infrastructure, things like servers that go into cloud and data centers, client devices that we would use on an everyday basis, consumer devices, automotive electronics. So a lot of really important applications that we go into. We actually have 9,000 customers. So we go, we're pretty broad, we're pretty pervasive. We've shipped 1 billion devices over the last 4 years. And like I said, you may not recognize Lattice as a household name, but chances are you're using our products on a daily basis. We're, just maybe a couple other facts. We're a worldwide company, traded on the NASDAQ, market cap of about 4 billion, but very innovative company. I joined a couple of years ago, and yeah, we're really excited about the potential and the future of the company.
Yeah, congratulations, Jim, on all the success. It's been good to work with you throughout the planning stage of this podcast, watching what Lattice is doing and seeing the opportunities it has to contribute right now with all of the connectivity that is going on in the world, data, devices that require some sort of connectivity back to the cloud, back to the edge. And you guys really have carved out a really interesting niche. And by the way, it's been quite a run on the NASDAQ. So
appreciate that. Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, as an industry analyst, Pat and I will say we don't do equities tracking, but we do talk about companies a lot in relation to their performance. And it's been interesting being at home and being able to actually follow CNBC and Bloomberg and this all day because we were always on airplanes. We just weren't able to constantly be watching what was going on. And boy, what a run this has been. And of course, it's been a crazy year with all kinds of uncertainty. But so I'd love to pivot here and talk to you a little bit about trends because, you heard me, I sort of alluded to, Jim, you guys being really carving out a niche and finding this opportunity. But, talk a little bit more about that. What trends is the company really leaning into and taking advantage of right now as it's servicing its customers?
Yeah, sure. No problem. And, I appreciate you mentioning some of the progress that we've made too. Look, we do still feel like we're kind of in the early innings of, unlocking the full potential of the company. It's only been a couple years since I joined, but so we feel like we've got a lot of room to run. But in terms of some of the trends that we're seeing in the industry, one of the cool things about the type of products that we develop, because I've worked in the industry my whole career and I've sold a lot of different types of semiconductor products. What's really cool about FPGAs or Lattice products is they're incredibly flexible. They're programmable, so they can go into lots of different applications. So in a lot of cases, we see the trends right at the very beginning. We're getting designed into the early edge of some of the leading trends. So, a couple things that we're seeing in the industry. Number one would certainly be kind of the adoption of artificial intelligence across all sorts of different devices. And, when we engage with our 9,000 customers, what we're seeing is a lot of customers trying to figure out, hey, how do I add more intelligence, more decision-making to my devices, whether they're at the edge of the network, whether they're IoT or industrial IoT. And so adding more artificial intelligence algorithms into their devices to bring intelligence to the device. And what's great about that for us is actually our devices are really good at AI processing, specifically at inference processing, because inference algorithms are parallel and FPGAs can be programmed to be parallel. And so we're a really good match for that. So we're working with our customers on all sorts of different applications to bring more intelligence to their devices. And we bring both, not just the hardware, but we actually have software solution stacks that help our customers as well. That's probably one trend. The second trend that we're seeing is around security and around hardware and platform level security. So all of our customers are always very concerned about making sure that their systems and their platforms are totally secure and are always protecting their users' data. And, if you go back a few years, people were much more focused on security at maybe the software layer, right? So viruses and malware at the software layer, that's what people were worried about. Still, there's a big focus on that, security at software, but there's also a lot more focus now on security on the hardware and the firmware of the system to make sure that even the hardware and firmware are totally protected from malware and malicious attacks. And so, so we've developed some specific devices and software that protect customer system from potential attacks of the hardware and firmware, and make sure that that system is protected actually over the life of the system. In fact, we've got solutions that protect from when the system is first assembled through the deployment all the way through the end of life of the system. And so, I would say security, and especially hardware security, is a second trend that we see. And then, maybe if I picked a third one, we're seeing a big trend towards automation. And actually, it's interesting. I think the COVID-19 experience that we've all had over the last 6+ months has actually accelerated this trend towards automation, and automation across a lot of different industries. So I think we're seeing this acceleration of automation. We're designed into all sorts of industrial automation equipment, like robotics, for example. So we're used in robotic arms for the precision motor control. That's for all the different little motors that are used in a robotic arm, industrial safety applications as well. So we're seeing I think an acceleration of trying to automate all sorts of industrial applications. And so that's something we're helping with our customers with as well. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. Like I said, one of the great things about our devices is they're unbelievably flexible, and I'm always amazed at what customers are using our devices for. Every time I talk to a customer, I'm amazed at what new application they've found for our products.
Yeah, it's a great overview, Jim, and I am amazed. It's always great when your company can intersect all the major buzzwords. I know my company and Daniel's certainly do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business. You're actually delivering real products based on that. And one thing for our listeners, if you're not deep into chips, think of an FPGA as just incredibly programmable, and that's just not just on the software side. You're actually programming the hardware and how it works. So this might contrast versus what we call an ASIC, an application-specific integrated circuit that might add an extra year to your development cycle. And that's the great part, and why having FPGAs all along that path are really smart, particularly when they're low power like lattices. But let's jump into something different. So I had the pleasure of cataloging it. I covered AMD when you were running the client division at AMD, and you certainly a lot of heads turned when you moved to Lattice because AMD looked like it was on its way, and your business was the business that was feeding the company, and quite frankly, the driving its stock. But you came in and made a lot of changes. This stock run up and didn't just happen by accident. I happened to catalog this. I would say the beginning of my coverage was your financial analyst day in New York City. Last year, maybe 18 months ago.
Seems like a long time ago, but yeah.
No, I know. Where I think the way I characterized it is pretty much everything changed. Jim and his team changed everything. But without them having to read that Forbes article, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Maybe a little bit about kind of why I got attracted to Lattice. So kind of why I joined Lattice is, what I saw at the company was a company that had sort of some really good foundation fundamentals, but needed a better strategy, some more focus, right? And so a couple of things that the company had was, number one, it had a great stable of technology, right? So great portfolio of technology, long history of innovation, sort of good culture of innovation. That's really important to a high-tech product company, number one. And then number two, the other thing that I saw and I knew from being in the industry is that the company had great customer relationships, right? It had, like I mentioned before, 9,000 customers, so really wide base of customers, and was really well respected by the customers. And so a couple of really good foundational pieces, but I felt like the company had a lot more potential and we could do a lot more with the company. And so we did make some changes, some pretty big changes early on, just within the first, say, especially 6 to 12 months. One of the changes that I think was probably the most important and one of the first changes that we made, and this really came within really the first 3, 4, 5 months, was we brought in an entirely new leadership team. And we brought in new leaders for engineering, for sales, for marketing, for operations, for finance, entirely new leadership team. And this team didn't just have a little bit of experience in the industry, like 5 or 10 years of experience. Literally, each one of those people has like multiple decades of experience in the FPGA industry. So they know the products, they know the customers, they know the industry in and out, right? So that was really important. But more important than that is they help drive a cultural change at the company, a cultural change around moving much faster, getting much more products out the door, right? Innovating even faster than we had in the past, executing better, being more disciplined and much more accountable. And so I think there was a big cultural change that happened as part of that leadership change. So I think that was one big change that I feel really good about that we did very early on. The second big change that we made was to the fundamental strategy of the company. If you look back over the years, say a few years ago, the Lattice was just trying to do too many different things. And what we did is we really focused the company on its core expertise, what it's been great at for over 35 years, which is what I said at the beginning, right? These small, power efficient FPGAs. That's what it's always been great at. We really refocused the company on that, doubled down on that, increased the investment, not just in the hardware devices, but especially in the software as well, started building application-specific software. And you're already starting to see the results of that now with new products coming out the door. We've actually tripled the cadence of products that we're bringing out versus just a few years ago. So 3 times as many products we're getting out the door. And so I think that strategic shift on our product roadmap and focus was a big deal. And then maybe the third one that which is more mundane, but is important too, is we put a lot of new operational discipline into the company. And I know that sounds more mundane, but it really is important. It's important to our customers because it helps us really execute our roadmap in a very reliable way. And so that was probably the third big change. But look, we feel like we've just kind of scratched the surface and we're kind of in the early innings. And although we made some reasonable progress to date over the last couple of years, we feel like we've got a lot more work to do, and we're really excited about the future.
Yeah, it's been a very impressive run. And our audience is a real mix, Jim. We have some business and investor folks. I think we've been we've been satisfying them a little bit throughout the beginning of this show, but we also have the geeks and the nerds. So Pat did the 101 explaining the FPGA, but then we have the people that are going to see that, you, the CEO of Lattice, joined our show, and they're going to want to hear a little bit more. And so I'm going to riff off that last question that Pat asked you.
Sure.
Just kind of, you mentioned all the successes, but dig a little bit deeper and what are some of the accomplishments that you are most satisfied with? Because it looks like down to the product level, you guys have made some really impressive, moves into this FPGA space. Yeah,
I appreciate that. I'm more of a guy that's focused on the future and what are the new challenges or opportunities in front of us. But, if I kind of reflect over the last couple of years since I joined, and if I tried to pick out one thing that I feel like kind of in reflection, I feel really good about, or that, we're proud about as a team, I think it has to do with the customers and a pretty significant change in the perception of Lattice at our customers. When I first joined the company, as you can imagine, I spent a lot of time with customers, right? I met as many customers as I could. I basically just listened, right? Tell me about what you love about Lattice, what you hate about Lattice, what we can do better. So I spent a lot of time in those first few months with customers. And, what I would hear is kind of mixed, right? I would hear, hey, we've worked with you guys for years. We like your products, but we sure would like to have more products from you. And we'd like those products to be delivered on a regular basis. And we'd like a long-term roadmap. And so, there were good, and there were things that areas that we definitely had to improve. And so we spent a lot of time rebuilding our product roadmap, not just for the next year or two, but really for the next 5 to 7 years, and then sharing that with all of our top most strategic customers. And that roadmap, we feel, is really innovative. It's expanding our product portfolio. A little bit of that is public today, but as you can imagine, a lot more of that is still, we haven't shared publicly, but we shared it with our customers, and they're really excited about that. And I think over the last couple of years, we've really shifted the perception in the customers from, Lattice as just a component supplier to Lattice as, wow, this is a company that we can partner with on driving all sorts of future innovations around some of those areas I mentioned earlier, whether it's automation or artificial intelligence or security. These guys can be a real partner to us moving forward. And so I feel really good about how we've shifted that perception with the customer to now perceiving Lattice as much more of a partner and a strategic solution supplier. And, we still have more work to do. There's still a lot more opportunity to continue to drive that with our customers. But, I'm probably most proud of that over the last couple of years.
Yeah, Jim, the increased rate of change in terms of the product schedule has been impressive. And whether, I saw Nexus in 20 nanometer FDSOI, Crosslink NX, Certus NX, and I'm sure you have a robust roadmap.
We do.
That the engineers are working on too. And by the way, a lot of this was done during the pandemic. I mean, it's been full of surprises out there. And I'm curious, how has Lattice weathered the storm?
That's a good question. Yeah, certainly 2020 has been a little bit different year than we all thought at the beginning of 2020. So, I think all things considered, we've weathered it pretty well. One of the things, Pat, because you mentioned it just now, that I was really worried about when we first went into that, where a lot of employees working from home, and we still have over 50% of our employees working from home. And when we first moved into that mode in kind of the late March timeframe, I was pretty concerned that, hey, that might have some impact to our productivity or execution ability. And, because we had built out this really cool roadmap, we were really excited about all these innovative products we were bringing out. We had committed a bunch of these programs to our customers and externally as well. And so I was a little worried about, hey, what kind of impact would that have to execution? But, hats off to our engineering team. They really did make that transition pretty successfully. And they've really continued to execute on the product roadmap, even despite the work from home and all of the dynamics around COVID-19. So look, we've continued to get products out on schedule. Our roadmap looks really strong. The other thing I would say, since we were just talking about customers too, is, with our sales team, I was worried about starting to lose touch with our customers, right? If you can't visit them, I'm a guy that loves to visit the customers face to face, be, talking with them all the time. And I thought, geez, if you can't visit them face to face, how do you keep that customer intimacy? But I was surprised by our sales team still has been able to really keep that high level of customer engagement. And the funny thing is that what I didn't realize is, look, our customers weren't traveling, right? Like they weren't traveling on airplanes. They weren't commuting to their jobs either. So in some sense, they actually have more time available. And so we've actually found it a little easier to get a hold of some of our customers now in the current environment. Now it's through over video or Zoom or whatever, right? But still the level of engagement is really high. So I think, look, all things considered, definitely dynamic environment, lots of challenges this year, but I think all things considered, we've weathered it pretty well. And, obviously we all hope that, things start to return to whatever the new normal is as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a year, Jim. You couldn't have said it better. Patrick and I both talk all the time about how much we love to travel and go to events and see customers and get face to face. And then sometimes we, on our better home days, we say, I think I could do without this. I actually have come to realize that if we can do it on video and we can attend these events and participate in a big way, if we're able to, continue, the involvement from afar, let's do it. So, 2020 is going to be a year I think every one of us is going to look back at some point in our life and be like, gosh, I'm glad that year is over. But at the same time, for tech, it's actually been quite a boon. And so like you guys, and speaking of, tech, and every company has to deal with competition, and Lattice has had a lot of success. It's grown. Its revenues are up. Its stock price is up. Its ambitions are up. You've brought in this new team, and it's feeling strong. But your competition is legit. How is that kind of scene shoring up? Companies like Intel and Xilinx are out there, all doing what you're doing. But I'm sure you guys feel like you've differentiated. Talk just a little bit about that competitive scene.
Yeah, look, we always take competition super seriously, right? No doubt about that. And so we're always focused on that. But, we feel like we're really well positioned when it comes to the competitive environment. We believe we're really the only company out there that's really innovating and aggressively investing in this area that we talked about, this small, power efficient, programmable devices. We think we've got the most innovation and the most competitive roadmap out there. Yeah, when you look at the two competitors you just mentioned, Xilinx and the former Altera, now part of Intel, what we see is they are very focused on making very, very large FPGAs, very large, very high power FPGAs that are focused on some specific applications like data center acceleration. We're really focused at the other end of the spectrum on driving innovation on those small power efficient FPGAs. And that's needed by a whole bunch of applications that we talked about earlier, right? You can't put a 200 watt FPGA in an IoT device or an industrial IoT device, right? And so our FPGAs are kind of on the bleeding edge of driving this level of innovation for all those applications that need programmability, flexibility, and power efficiency. Actually, Pat knows from my former life that I love doing competitive demos, like side-by-side competitive demos. So at our product launch, our most recent big product launch that we did in December of last year, which was for our new Nexus platform. And Nexus, we're going to build a whole bunch of FPGAs based on this Nexus platform. We introduced the first device, and we did a side-by-side competitive live. These were live competitive demonstrations versus Xilinx and Intel devices that we would compete with that product. And a live demonstration, there's always a little risk in that, right? And so, but I love doing those standby or those side-by-side comparisons. We showed live that we demonstrated up to 75% better power efficiency in the devices we're bringing to market versus our two competitors. And look, 75% better power efficiency, that's a big deal to our customers, right? In most applications, actually power is kind of the primary system design constraint, or at least it's one of the most important design constraints. whether you're battery operated or even if you're plugged into a wall outlet, the power usage is important. And so to bring 75% better power efficiency and better performance is a pretty big deal. So look, we feel like we're pretty well positioned competitively now. But of course, we always take our competitors very seriously. That's something we're always watching. But we feel really good about the roadmap that we have in front of us.
Jim, you always love to be working in a market or operating in a market where your competition isn't actually building new designs in the market that you participate in. And Intel and Xilinx are focused on different market at this point. Yeah. So, I'd like to say it's a 3-horse race in low power, but right now it really looks to me like a 1-horse race. And listen, I cover multiple companies, but your other big competitors are controllers as well, right?
Oh, microcontrollers
and ASICs, although those aren't necessarily direct competitors.
Yeah. Just to talk a little bit about, you mentioned microcontrollers. We are seeing, from a lot of customers that maybe used to use microcontrollers in the past, we're seeing a definite new level of interest in our products. And one of the key things that's driving that is one of the trends that I talked about earlier. So remember when I talked about artificial intelligence and people adding more intelligence to their systems, what we're seeing is where in the past they may have used microcontrollers for their systems. They're trying to add a lot more artificial intelligence processing, and AI algorithms are just inherently parallel algorithms. Yeah. And so an FPGA can be programmed to operate in parallel. A microcontroller is generally just a sequential processor. And so we're able to bring just a tremendously much higher level of performance for these applications at a really good power level. And so we're seeing, a lot of new areas where we can displace microcontrollers as an example now moving forward as well. So another place of, maybe competition beyond just traditional FPGA suppliers, but microcontrollers as well. So thanks for bringing it.
I appreciate rounding that out for our listeners. What I'd love to do is we've got time for one more question. And Jim, you had talked about, hey, I'm really a futures guy about building the future. Let's look to the future. Our success is great over the last 2 years, but I really don't want to spend too much time on this. So can you talk a little bit about what the future holds for the company and your customers? And you hinted a little bit at it, but can you, dial it in and focus in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, we are really excited about the future of the company. I mean, it's been a couple of years. We've made some reasonable progress over the last couple of years, but again, we still feel like we're in the early innings. Like there's a lot more potential to be unlocked with the company and a lot more ahead of us. And so number one is we're really excited about the product roadmap. Our product roadmap is expanding the portfolio. It's driving a whole new level of innovation, and not just at the hardware level, but software innovations as well. We brought out a steady stream of new software capabilities, and we're going to continue to do that as well. So you can certainly expect a very robust roadmap of innovation and new capabilities that we'll be bringing out over the coming years. But, we're also, I mentioned customers, right? We're also really excited about the level of engagement that we have with customers. We don't think we've ever had this level of engagement kind of in the history of the company with our customers. So we're excited about that. But if you look at the type of applications that we're addressing, look, these are the type of applications that are going to change the way we all work and live over the coming years, right? Artificial intelligence, automation, cloud computing, automotive electronics, all these applications, we're front and center in these type of applications. And these are going to fundamentally change the way we work and live moving forward. And so we're really excited about that. So we feel like we've got a great roadmap, great customer interaction, and we're just really well positioned to help drive some of these big fundamental trends that'll change all our lives over the coming years.
Yeah, Jim Anderson, thank you so much for spending this time with us and for giving us a little bit of a glimpse into the future, taking us a little bit down memory lane over the last few years. I think the past always sets precedent in many ways for what will be the future. And so it sounds like the foundational work has been done. The opportunity is starting to really become clear and evident. if there's a silver lining to everything that's gone on in 2020, it's that we've seen technology and digital transformation accelerate, which is obviously a beautiful thing if you're in the semiconductor space. Pat and I have said this on and on. I wrote a piece early in the year in Market Watch before the COVID pandemic, and I said in 2020, semiconductors will eat the world. And it actually, I had no idea how right on I was until we saw the actual ability for us to physically do anything on a normal basis all get moved into a digital environment. So thank you, Jim. The work of Lattice Semiconductor is certainly helping to lead the way.
Thanks for the time, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, there you have our show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and spending some time with us, with Jim Anderson, the CEO at Lattice Semiconductor. What a great 6.5 Insiders, Pat.
I know. It was great. I've been trying to get Jim on here forever, and there he was. So
yeah, he did a great job. And, it was just really enjoyable. It's always really interesting when someone that has both that technology chops and the business chops to lead a public company and to kind of get the perspective of what's being built, where it's going, and what it means. So anyways, for everyone out there that enjoyed this show, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button, hit those social media buttons, share this show, get the word out, let everybody see and hear from Jim and, of course, from ourselves. We always really appreciate all of our listeners here at the 6.5 podcast. So hit that button, subscribe to our show. We've got more weekly episodes coming. But for this episode of the 6.5 and the 6.5 Insiders podcast, Patrick and I have to say goodbye for now, but we'll see you really soon.